The top 10 murder trials of 2023. Viewer discretion is advised. Coming in at number 10, the eyedrop murder trial. Jesse Keski.
Jesse Keski is a 37-year-old woman from Franklin, Wisconsin. She was accused of poisoning her friend, Lynn Hernan, by spiking her drinks with a lethal dose of Visine in 2018, and then staging the scene to make it look like a suicide by drug overdose. Keski was also charged with 2 counts of felony theft for defrauding Hernan of nearly $300,000, spending the money on gambling and buying luxury gifts, which is believed to have been the motive in the murder. Later, Keski admitted to bringing the contaminated drinks to Hernan, but claimed that Lynn Hernan requested the concoction. Keski was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and 2 counts of theft in connection with the death of Lynn Hernan. Keski's sentencing has been delayed due to a 37-page letter believed to have been written by Keski. The letter reportedly contains instructions from Keski asking her friend Jessica to forge documents and create a tape recording pretending to be Lynn Hernan before she died and claiming that she indeed was planning to commit suicide. The letter, written on the back of Keski's trial notes, also contains language that implied that Keski's attorneys were involved in concocting the fake recording. Instead of following the instructions, Jessica instead turned the letter over to the sheriff, who then passed it along to the state. During what was supposed to be the sentencing hearing, Keski denied writing the letter or having any involvement in its creation. After her defense attorneys withdrew from the case based on possible conflicts of interest, Judge Doro ruled to delay the sentencing while Keski is appointed new counsel. Keski faces a mandatory life sentence for the first-degree homicide conviction. A status hearing has been scheduled for January 12, 2024.
Number 9, the mother-stabbed murder trial. Sidney Powell.
23-year-old Sidney Powell was accused of murdering her mother, Brenda Powell, during a heated argument in March of 2020. During the trial, prosecutors indicated that Sidney attacked her mother because she had been suspended from university due to poor academic performance, a secret she did not want her parents to uncover. According to the prosecutors, after Brenda confronted her daughter about the suspension, Sidney struck her mother in the head with an iron skillet and then stabbed her nearly 30 times in the neck with a steak knife. Sidney's defense team argued that she was a diagnosed schizophrenic amid a psychotic break when she attacked her mother, and should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. Despite this defense, Powell was found guilty of 2 counts of murder along with felonious assault and tampering with evidence. Sidney Powell was sentenced to 15 years to life in a state correctional facility for the murder.
Number 8, Hell on Wheels. Mackenzie Shirilla.
Mackenzie Shirilla, a 19-year-old Ohio teenager, was accused of intentionally crashing her car that resulted in the deaths of her boyfriend, Dominic Rousseau, and his friend, Davion Flanagan. Prosecutors argued that Shirilla had an increasingly toxic relationship with Rousseau and that she previously made violent threats, including threatening to crash her car with Rousseau in it, which she ultimately did to end their tumultuous relationship. During the trial, security video of the crash played in the courtroom, showing her vehicle speeding at 100 miles per hour and crashing into a brick building with no signs of slowing down. Both Dominic Rousseau and Davion Flanagan were pronounced dead at the scene, while Shirilla was taken to a local hospital. Shirilla was found guilty in a bench trial on 12 counts, including 4 counts of murder in the 2022 crash. Mackenzie Shirilla was sentenced to 2 concurrent 15 years to life sentences.
Number 7, the Love Triangle murder trial. Caitlin Armstrong.
Caitlin Armstrong, a 35-year-old yoga instructor accused of killing professional cyclist Anna Mariah Mo Wilson in Austin, Texas. Wilson was found suffering from multiple gunshot wounds at a friend's home in 2022, hours after meeting up with Armstrong's on and off again boyfriend, Colin Strickland. During the trial, prosecutors pointed out an overwhelming amount of evidence linking Armstrong to the crime, including video, cell phone, ballistic, and DNA evidence. GPS data showed that Armstrong had access to Strickland's fitness app, where she was able to track Wilson to the location where she was shot. Surveillance footage of the area showed Armstrong's SUV circling the area near the time of the fatal shooting. After the initial police interviews, Using her sister's passport, Caitlin Armstrong fled to Costa Rica, where she got plastic surgery, seemingly to change her appearance to avoid apprehension. After a 43-day manhunt, she was finally apprehended and deported back to the United States. While awaiting her trial, Armstrong tried escaping custody once again. Caitlin Armstrong was found guilty and sentenced to 90 years in prison by a 12-member jury. Recently, Armstrong has filed for a new trial, claiming that her defense team failed to explain that she was pregnant near the time she was arrested in Costa Rica, a factor she believes might have swayed the jury.
Number 6, the Hitman conspiracy murder trial, Charlie Adelson.
A 47-year-old Florida dentist, Charlie Adelson, was accused of hiring a hitman to murder his former brother-in-law, Dan Markel, during a tumultuous custody battle between Dan and Charlie's sister, Wendy Adelson. In July 2014, Markel was found shot in the head inside of his home by two men who were later convicted for the murder. The prosecution argued that Charlie had the money and the connections through an ex-girlfriend who solicited and carried out the murder of Markel. Much of the evidence was gathered after the FBI orchestrated an operation known as the Bump, which was designed to get the Adelson family and other members of the conspiracy talking about the hit. This operation led to many phone calls between Charlie and the matriarch of the family, his mother, Donna Adelson. Many of the conversations were seemingly in code. Adelson's defense claimed that the entire conspiracy was actually an extortion that Charlie was the victim of, which would explain the thousands of dollars Charlie paid to the hitman. However, the jury did not believe his story, and after 4 hours of deliberation, Charlie Adelson was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Charlie Adelson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A week after conviction, his mother, Donna Adelson, was arrested at the Miami National Airport as she and her husband, Harvey, were about to board a one-way flight to Vietnam. Donna is currently being charged with murder, conspiracy, and solicitation.
Number 5, the stepmother murder trial.
Letitia Stout was accused of murdering her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon Stout, after he was reportedly missing in January 2020. Letitia reported Gannon missing, but when the accounts of that day were questioned, Letitia's story continued to shift. Stories range from Gannon failing to return home after visiting a friend to being abducted by a man who raped Letitia after breaking into their home. It was later learned that Gannon likely died the same day Letitia contacted investigators after they found blood on her shoes. Blood splatter had been found on the walls and bloodstains on his mattress, carpet, and bedroom floor. Traces of blood were also found on the garage floor and the bumper of Letitia's car. Weeks after Letitia was arrested, Gannon's remains were found in a suitcase near the Florida Panhandle. Gannon Stout had 18 stab wounds to his chest, a gunshot to the head, a fractured skull, and cuts on his extremities. The jury later learned that the day of Gannon's disappearance, Letitia asked her teenage daughter to buy carpet cleaning supplies, trash bags, and additional items to cover the murder. Letitia Stout's defense team argued that she suffered from a major psychotic break. However, Letitia was still found guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Number 4, the tortured son murder trial, Shonda Vander Ark.
Shonda Vander Ark is a 44-year-old woman who was accused of torturing and starving her 15-year-old special needs son, Timothy Ferguson, to death in July of 2022. Evidence showed that Vander Ark forced Timothy to sleep in a small closet under the basement stairs with nothing but a tarp. Vander Ark withheld food from Timothy by locking the pantry, refrigerator, and freezer, feeding him only bread and bread soaked in extreme hot sauce. Vander Ark installed cameras, motion sensors, and alarms throughout the house to surveil Timothy while she was away, using Timothy's older brother, Paul Ferguson, as the strong arm in the abuse. The abuse included starvation, forced vomiting, imposed sleep deprivation, restraining in shackles and zip ties, and hours-long ice baths. In his dying moments, video footage showed Vander Ark calling Timothy pathetic as she clamped his mouth shut for breathing too loud. At the time of his death, Timothy weighed just 69 pounds. Images of Timothy were shown to the jury, but kept away from public view due to the graphic nature. Co-defendant Paul Ferguson testified against his mother, admitting to the cruel and unusual abuses that led to Timothy's death. After a short deliberation, the jury found Shonda Vander Ark guilty of first-degree murder and first-degree child abuse. Vander Ark is scheduled for sentencing in January 2024, where she faces a mandatory life sentence. Paul Ferguson is scheduled for sentencing on the same day after he pled guilty to first-degree child abuse.
Coming in at number 3, the Murdaugh murders. Alex Murdaugh.
In June 2021, Alex Murdaugh, now disgraced ex-lawyer, called 911 from his property to report that he had found his 22-year-old son Paul and his wife Maggie murdered. But when Alex Murdaugh's alibi didn't line up, he quickly became a suspect. Video evidence taken on Paul's phone only minutes before his death was played in court, which multiple witnesses testified to hearing Murdaugh's voice, despite his claims that he was not there at the time of the deaths. When Murdaugh took the stand in his defense, he admitted that he lied to investigators about not being at the scene of the crime that night. Another video showed Murdaugh wearing a different set of clothes earlier in the day than when police arrived, and the earlier set of clothes was never found. The clothing he was wearing when police arrived were seemingly freshly laundered and a little too clean for someone claiming to have checked the bloodied bodies of his deceased loved ones. In the end, the jury reached a verdict in less than 3 hours where they found Alex Murdaugh guilty on all counts. Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. More recently, Murdaugh's lawyers are requesting a new trial, citing allegations that the court clerk improperly influenced the jury. The defense will get to put forth evidence at a hearing scheduled for January 29, 2024.
Number 2, the beheaded lover murder trial. Taylor Schabusiness.
In February 2022, the severed head of 24-year-old Chad Therion was discovered by his mother in a bucket in the basement of their home, shortly after a visit by his girlfriend, Taylor Schabusiness. After alerting authorities of this gruesome discovery, other severed body parts were discovered in a variety of places, including a part of his leg and foot were found in Schabusiness's van. Schabusiness admitted to investigators to strangling Therion to death during sexual intercourse while they were both intoxicated with methamphetamine. She continued to have intercourse with Therion's body before dismembering, removing his internal organs, and mutilating it. Evidence also included Schabusiness's internet searches for Jeffrey Dahmer, showing an unhealthy fascination with the serial killer. Her defense team argued that Schabusiness was not mentally stable at the time of the murder and pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease. However, the jury found that she was not mentally ill when she killed Chad Therion, finding her guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. Taylor Schabusiness was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
And we're finishing off the list with number 1, the Doomsday Cult triple murder trial. Lori Vallow.
In November of 2019, family members reported Lori Vallow's children, 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ, missing. Both Lori Vallow and her fifth and current husband, Chad Daybell, refused to cooperate with the investigation. The couple was later found in Hawaii and extradited to Idaho. In June of 2020, the remains of the 2 children were found on Daybell's property. The remains of JJ, Lori Vallow's special needs adopted son, were found with his arms and legs bound together and duct tape covering his mouth, while Tylee's remains were dismembered and burned in a fire pit. Deeper into the investigation, many deaths circulating both Vallow and Daybell became suspicious, including the father of the children, Charles Vallow, and Daybell's previous wife, Tammy. During the trial, witnesses testified that the couple were deeply involved in a doomsday belief system, claiming they were seeing zombies and demonic possession all around them, including her 2 children and ex-husband Charles. Lori Vallow was accused of killing her 2 children and conspiring to kill her husband's first wife and was found guilty on all charges. Lori Vallow received the maximum punishment, which was life in prison without the possibility of parole. Vallow is facing a second trial where she's being charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder and the death of her ex-husband Charles and attempted murder of another, Brandon Boudreaux. Chad Daybell is set to face trial where he's charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of JJ, Tylee, and his wife Tammy, where prosecutors are seeking the death penalty.